Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday. It is September 6, 2011, and I will call this meeting of the Norfolk City Council to order. Let me advise you all that this is an open meeting, and posted in the northwest corner of this room is the actual Open Meeting Act. If you would stand with us, please. Join us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll continue with roll call.
Coy?
Here.
Lange?
Here.
Merrill?
Here.
Clausen?
Here.
Miron?
Here.
Brenneman?
Here.
Faust?
Here.
Saunders?
Here.
Okay, and under action items, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
A motion with a second to approve the consent agenda as
I'll be abstaining from voting on the consent agenda tonight. I have a contractual agreement.
thanks, Councilman. All right, with that being said, if the rest of you would please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative. Councilmember Clausen abstaining. Motion carries.
All right, and looking for a consideration of approval of the full agenda before.
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
Motion with a second for approval of the full agenda. Again, if you will please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
Okay. We'll jump right to special presentations. Shane, you have something for us tonight on recreation.
I do, Your Honor and Council. Next week, we're going to focus on Tazewka Park on our recreation update. Pat Mersney's out of town this week, but I kind of wanted him to bring everyone up to speed on the improvements there and how they're going. There's been some significant improvements over the summer at Taha as well. Well, we're playing football, not baseball quite, but we're playing football at Veterans Memorial Park, and 2 successful games down there, and I heard a lot of good reports in the crowd, and the field looks great, and the stands are coming along pretty nicely. So we're moving forward. There's some parking lots being developed, and Nemaha's currently working on the baseball stadium. The stadium's down, and the lights are down, so there'll be new standards going up there as well. One thing we haven't talked about much is the aquatics facility, and I'm glad to report that Burbach Associates are going to be giving us an update tomorrow morning. They're scheduled to have a progress meeting with the contractors and with staff tomorrow morning on the aquatics facility. But I do know this: we got half the footings poured for the multi-use facility, which is going to be a big structure. If you ever go down there and take a peek at it and you see those footings, it's going to be a nice structure that's going to have a lot of versatility and a lot of impact on the facility down there in Hull. Also, we're going to start pouring some of the concrete for the pool vessels themselves beginning next week if everything stays on schedule. So there's some big holes in the ground, and there's a lot of infrastructure work that goes to, as you can imagine, when you're creating a vessel that you want to last a long, long time, that's supposed to hold water for a long, long time. You want a lot of good, solid infrastructure, and it's going to take a lot of significant concrete and work to get it done there. But we're going to start on those pours, hopefully again beginning next week. So that is the update. I think the community's been very gracious in their patience with us, and it's kind of it gets a little clustery down there at the football games, but the neighborhoods have been patient. We haven't heard a great deal of complaints in the neighborhood from parking yet. We really appreciate when the citizens think of their neighbors and think of the neighborhood down there and watch parking in front of driveways and blocking fire hydrants and those kind of things, and try to keep as much free-flowing access there as we can, but yet park in a reasonable manner that they don't have to walk too far. It's kind of like going to a Husker game, I guess, almost here in Norfolk. You have to walk a little ways to get to the excitement, but so far in the first 2 games we haven't had a great deal of controversy down there, and a lot of favorable comments to staff and to elected officials. So we're moving in good order and good speed with the whole facility down there, Mayor. So any questions, be happy to answer them. Or Dennis, you got any update, Dennis?
I'm good.
Okay, council, any questions at all? If not, we'll move on then to the proclamation before us tonight, which is for Family Day, a day to eat dinner with your children. Whereas the use of illegal and prescription drugs and the abuse of alcohol and nicotine constitute the greatest threat to the well-being of America's children. And whereas 16 years of survey conducted by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University have consistently found that the more often children and teenagers eat dinner with their families, the less likely they are to smoke, drink, and use illegal drugs. And whereas frequent family dining is associated with lower rates of teen smoking, drinking, illegal use of drugs and prescription drugs, and whereas parents who engage in their children's lives through such activities as frequent family dinners are less likely to have children who abuse substances, and whereas the correlation between family dinners and reduced risk for teen substance abuse is well documented, and whereas the family dinners have long constituted a substantial pillar of family life in America, now therefore I, Sue Fookman, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim September 26, 2011 as Family Day, a day to eat dinner with your children in the City of Norfolk, and I encourage all citizens to recognize and participate in the observance. Seeing there's no one here to accept that, we will move on to then a presentation tonight from Mr. Peitzmeyer with the Lower Elkhorn Natural Resource District.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, my name is Ken Peitzmeyer. I'm the director of the Lower Elkhorn Natural Resource District, and I'm here to make a presentation. I'm here to make a presentation of $30,000 regarding the hazardous waste facility, and so I would like to present that to Mr. Gates. Is that fine with you, Madam Mayor?
Well, and how about you, Mr. Lund? I think that'd be great if you'd come forward too, as well, and receive the dollars.
There also is a small plaque which says that we have provided partial funding, so if that would go somewhere conspicuous in the building, we'd appreciate it. Gary, we'll get that. And thank you for your early
Well, thank you
consideration.
very much. Gary, do you want to give any kind of a brief update there?
We are just about done with design work. We're ready to come to the council next meeting with permission to bid. So it's moving along nicely. Appreciate the NRD's support. The Nebraska Environmental Trust has taken the lion's share of this with $125,000. NRD helps us bring this down to a manageable level for the city of Norfolk, and greatly appreciate their support.
I can certainly echo that. And what this is going to mean for the city of Norfolk, Gary, shortly is,
We're going to have a permanent location for drop-off of household hazardous materials, so keep it out of the landfill and out of the handling system. All the people that get involved with collecting and handling the trash on the way to the landfill, get it out of the landfill and get it someplace where it can be disposed of properly.
great. I appreciate you taking the lead in this because obviously it's been a requested need for some time. So, Ken, thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You bet. Appreciate it. Okay, then let's move on to public hearings. First on the agenda is a public hearing to review the City of Norfolk fiscal year 2011-12 municipal budget. And with that, I'd like to go on and combine and open the public hearing to review the City of Norfolk's fiscal year 2011-12 proprietary budget, the water, sewer, and solid waste, and as well, the public hearing to receive comments regarding changing the vehicle parking fund tax request for 2011-12 fiscal year from the amount of the 2010-11 fiscal year. So again, I'm going to open all these public hearings at once, and we're going to look to Randy to give explanation of.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think Shane's going to start us off. And then
Well, I will, Your Honor.
shift
Thanks,
it over to
Randy,
me.
Mayor and Council. Tonight's the public hearing for our budget, our annual budget, and I'm proud to say that the managers and staff have worked hard to put together what I believe is a lean yet responsive budget for the city of Norfolk. You know, when it comes down to city government, you got to think of at least in my mind, you think of one thing, and that's service and accountability for those resources that the community has given us. And we really are a service organization. It takes a lot of personnel to do what we do because we do service, and that's our number one goal, is to provide to the public the services that they expect their government to provide them. Provide them, in a lean and a responsive fashion. When you look at this slide, you can see, out of this pie graph, you can see what kind of missions we have as a community and what kind of services we do provide. Everything from solid waste to fire to police protection to sewer maintenance and water service to park service to engineering and water pollution control. It just goes on, and you can see that all of those touch in the heart of the matter, and that's, again, service to the public. It also shows you the number of employees we have per department, and it shows the allotted dollar amount that goes with each one. And I kind of wanted to show you that slide because, again, our personnel are really the heart of what we do as a community and the heart of that service provide. And we got the department managers here tonight to answer any specific questions that the citizens or the mayor and council may have of their particular department. And I'm proud they're here, but I can tell you that the folks that they represent are the ones that really do the heavy lifting, and that's all the employees that are kind of behind the scenes and really do the work out there in the streets and make everything work as well as it does in a city of our size. So if I want to just run through some of the departments and show you the percentage of personnel costs that not cost, but that actually personnel complement that we have in each department. Administration is personnel are 39% of that budget. Government subsidies and transfers are 30%, and the administration is kind of the catch-all department where if something doesn't seem quite to fit quite right, it goes into the administration department, and you can see the variety of different pie slices there that account for that budget. We have 25 employees in administration, and that includes your honor and council as well in that complement. Engineering has 5 employees with a budget of right at $608,000. Personnel costs, again, 71%, so a large portion of that budget is personnel. And I'm focused on personnel to try to pinpoint what it means to be a government and what it means to provide that service. We can't do anything without those people and without their eyes and ears and brains and muscle out there on the street. Street maintenance, personnel costs are 61% of that budget. Capital outlay, 4.64%, and utilities and maintenance is 17%, and operating supplies and materials are 13% of that budget. So again, personnel. Park maintenance, 20 full-time employees, and 55%, almost 56% of that is personnel cost. Housing has just under 6 employees, and personnel costs are very heavy, the most heavy in this department. That's because of their mission, and that accounts for 92% of that $456,000 budget. Recreation, 1.67 full-time employees and a whole bunch of part-time employees, and personnel costs are 72% of that budget. Library has 15 employees, and personnel costs are 65% of that budget. Auditorium, 2.43 employees. Some of those employees are obviously shared between departments. A budget of $173,000, and their personnel cost in that budget are 72%. Fire employees in the public safety arena, $3.69 million budget, and personnel costs are 85%. Region 11 is just 1 employee, and the total budget is $144,000, and their personnel cost is 55%. Police employees, 58 employees. And the personnel costs are 85% of that budget at $4.89 million total budget. The SNARE task force, we got a half of a equivalent employee in there in that task force. And this is where you see some change there. The personnel costs are just 12% of that cost, and it's a small budget, $143,000, but they have a lot of influence from administration and overhead of different dollars that they have to expend in that program in order to make that come together, such as buys for drugs and those kind of things when they're trying to enforce the law. Water employees, folks that bring water to all the homes and businesses in the community, have 11 employees. And you'll see in the utility funds that the capital outlay far outweigh the personnel costs. So the personnel costs change in the utility funds, and personnel costs are 11% of the $6.8 million budget. Capital outlay is 73%. Sewer maintenance, again, 4 employees, large capital outlay. This is this pipe in the ground to get sewer to and fro and replace sewer lines and put in new sewer lines and maintain those. $4.8 million or just over $4 million budget. Personnel costs are 5.5%, but a large, again, capital outlay. Water pollution control, this is sewer treatment, a service that obviously all these services are pretty vital to our success. We have 9 employees there and a $3.6 million budget. Capital outlay 54% and personnel costs 17% of that budget. Solid waste or trash processing and dealing with the solid waste that the community generates has personnel costs of 22% and other operating costs for the landfill of 48% of the budget. I run through that at probably some risk, to be honest with you, because it highlights the personnel costs so much. And you know, if you don't understand or you don't take time to sit and think about what government is like, maybe you don't appreciate the fact that it takes boots on the ground to do what we do as a community. It takes employees that are bought into the system and bought into doing what we do. And I just wanted to highlight that for the mayor and council, and most importantly for the community, because oftentimes they don't get the credit that they deserve. And I'm not talking about the folks in this room necessarily, even though they're vital, but I'm talking again about the boots on the ground employees that are really doing the heavy lifting. And it takes that, and it takes a considerable amount of our resources, of the citizens' resources, in order to fund those personnel costs. But without those personnel, we have nothing to provide, and that's the bottom line. We have nothing to provide. I mean, everything changes drastically without those people, and I just wanted to highlight them this year. I think it's been a while since we've actually just looked at those costs and understood that they're a significant part of the budget that you're considering tonight, and they are irreplaceable, and they have an eye for detail, and they have an eye for keeping a lean and responsive city government, because when your constituents interact with those employees, it's their charge to give them as much customer service as they can generate for that day. And sometimes that's not always easy. Sometimes it's not always easy to give customer service to the best of our ability, but that's our mission, that's our charge, and that's our expectations of our employees, and I'm very proud to say I think they do, day in and day out, do a pretty outstanding job of providing that customer service. So, with those quick rundown of personnel cost and what the different divisions do in a very short nutshell, I'll turn it over to Randy so he can talk about a little bit of the history of the total budget and maybe get into some of the numbers for you.
All right, thanks, Shane. This first slide I've got up has a 10-year history of the budget. And you'll notice when you get out to the right-hand side of that, where we have the 11-12 budget that we're talking about tonight, and 10-11 budget we just finished, there's 2 bars. The yellow bar is how that budget was when you approved it this time last year before we amended it. And at the August 1 council meeting, you amended that budget to make it look like the next bar to the right, that blue bar. There's about a $19 million difference between those 2 bars. And the lion's share of that difference is the $16.4 million of voter-approved recreation bonds that's in the budget as it was amended. We did not want to presuppose the voters were going to approve those when we put the budget together a year ago. So we went in and amended that budget. The amended budget also reflects some early payment of debt that we did for an interest savings, and a small change related to the purchase of the Supertel building. Most of the purchase of the Supertel building won't show up on our budget because it's being financed through the City of Norfolk Facilities Corporation as a lease purchase, and that portion will not show in our budget. But I want you to be aware that when we're talking about the 11-12 budget and comparing the 11-12 budget to the 10-11 budget, we're comparing the 10-11 budget as it's been amended. So when you look in your budget document, all of the 10-11 numbers are the amended numbers.
Randy, is your mic on? Is your mic on?
Yes.
So you can hear me all right? And you'll notice also from 10-11 is amended to 11-12, there's about a $5 million decrease, and that's because, primarily, once again, because of that rec facilities project. The entire $16.4 million is in the 11-12 amended budget. Only the unspent portion is in the 10-11 amended budget. Only the unspent portion is in the 11-12 budget. So we spent about $7 million of that $16.4 million, and that $7 million shows as capital outlay in the 10-11 amended budget, and the other $9.4 million is ending fund balance. So the whole $16.4 million is in that number. Only the $9.4 million that is unspent at the end of 2010-11 carries forward as beginning fund balance. That shows it's all being spent in 11-12. So the impact on that budget is $9.4 million, not $16.4 million. So that's why, primary reason why that bar for 11-12 is lower than 10-11. This is a slide that usually shows what the citizens are most interested in, is what's going to happen to my property tax. The blue bar in this slide is the City of Norfolk's levy rate, both for 10-11 and 11-12. We had no change in our property tax, almost no change in our assessed valuation. The green bars are all the other first-class cities in Nebraska, and these are their last year's levy rates. We don't know for sure what's going to happen for this year. We know for sure what's going to happen for us this year, and that's that blue bar, and I expect we'll remain the fourth lowest of all of the first-class cities. We'll know that for sure after the other cities do their budgets. And our share of the total tax levy is relatively small, somewhere between 10 and 11%, and that's that little blue slice of the pie. And the other big yellow slice of the pie, when you get your tax bill, property tax bill, that's everybody else. That's the school, the county, and all the other smaller taxing entities. So when you get your tax bill, when citizens get their tax bill and look at it and they see it's gone up or gone down, a lot of them seem to jump to the conclusion that's the city's fault. In most cases, since we're such a small piece of that total tax bill, it's something somebody else did that made those taxes go up or down. We can have an impact on it, but you can see our slice of the pie is so small, we can have relatively big change up or down in our property tax and make relatively little change in a person's tax bill. Also, property tax is a relatively small slice of total general fund revenues. If you look at this pie chart, you'll see right here the slice is property tax, and it's less than 9% of general fund revenues. The big dog is sales tax. It alone is over 40% of general fund revenues. Second largest revenue source is MPPD lease revenue. We lease our system in Nebraska Public Power District for 12% of system revenues, and that's almost a quarter of general fund revenues, or a little over a quarter, I guess. And everything else put together is also about a quarter of general fund revenues, and that's made up a multitude of small revenues, like telephone